Hey, yes, good morning and welcome back once again to The Photography Guy. I am The Photography Guy. This is episode number 69 for Sunday, January the 18th, 2015. I'm your host, Jack. Thanks for joining me here to learn more about your cameras and making great photographs. Please check out my website if you have a chance, and that is thephotographyguy.net, where you can comment on all these shows. You can also, at thephotographyguy.net, people don't realize, but that is also, gotta turn his mic down just a little bit here. That is also a great place to pick up the podcasts. So if you don't know what a podcast is, it's just the audio edition of this show. That way, if you're riding in your car and you want to do a little recap and listening again, you can do so. Once again, that's thephotographyguy.net. Now, if you are listening to the audio podcast, I do have to ask you, why are you not going over and check out the video at 42 Technoman on YouTube? The videos will give you a lot more in-depth. You'll get to see it in live and in living color. Folks, if you want to learn more about Photoshop editing with Photoshop Elements, and I have some new classes coming up here very, very soon I'm working on. You'll find those at jtclearning.com, where you'll find hours of photography training at a price that everybody can afford. Also, join my Facebook group. Many of you have. We're almost at 500 folks on that Facebook group, and that is pretty amazing. When I started that group, I told my wife, I said, you know, if I had 10 people to talk to about photography on a little closed group, wouldn't that be a pretty amazing thing? Well, now we're almost at 500 of you out there. Now, I can't say with that many people in the Facebook group, every video on YouTube should be watched at least 500 times, right? Every video I post, you should watch because you're going to learn more about your photography. So today, we had a great question come in from actually one of our live viewers this morning. And this viewer is Susan, and Susan is from the great country of Canada. I can't tell you we're working on passports right now because we used to go to Niagara Falls in Canada at least once a year. But lately, they changed the rules in the States, and they said, hey, now we know you're an American citizen, but you need a passport. So we're applying for all that to get the passports in so we can come back to the beautiful place of Niagara Falls in Canada. Now, I don't know where Susan lives from that area, but anyway, this question came from Susan. Jack, I wanted to know if I needed to buy Lightroom to be able to shoot using Camera RAW. Or could I just use Elements as I always have? Now, this is a great question. And I first want to begin talking about Camera RAW and what it is for those out there that's not really familiar with Camera RAW. And we're going to bring that to light here this morning and show you a little bit about Camera RAW and how Camera RAW is actually created, why it was created. We're going to talk about what it's used for, and maybe what you shouldn't use Camera RAW for. We're also going to talk a little bit about, are you a great photographer if you don't use Camera RAW? Can you still be a professional? Well, I believe so. So this morning we have a great opportunity here, and I have what I call some canned videos. Now by canned, that means I pre-recorded the videos like I did a few weeks ago, and Jake, my buddy Jake there, said that he really liked that format because I think it keeps me more on task when I pre-record and I have those ready to go. So we're going to switch over to the first one here. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of coffee, and, you know, just watch along here, and you're going to learn about what Camera RAW is. So let's go ahead and get started. This is, as I probably already stated, a question I received over an email. This question comes from Susan. Susan, thank you very much for your question. The question today is, do I need Lightroom to shoot raw images, or can I use Photoshop Elements? But first I wanted to back up a little bit, even before that. We're going to talk today a little bit about raw images. Now, raw images, a lot of people think if you shoot raw, you're going to get a better photograph than if you just shoot straight JPEG. Well, there's different instances that you're going to need to have either raw or JPEG. Some cameras, such as my D600, and I think the D90 will do it, the D300, the D800. These cameras allow us to capture both images at the same time because there's two different SD card slots. So you can turn your camera on to shoot RAW and also shoot JPEG. Let's back up for a minute. What is RAW image? A RAW image in either a Nikon, a Canon, or a Sony camera, or even some Fuji cameras will shoot RAW. RAW is a way that we capture everything in the image. Now, what do I mean by everything in the image? Do I mean that you're simply going to point the camera and you're capturing the whole exposure? If you use JPEG, it shrinks it down? No, that's not it at all. What I mean by RAW images, such as if we have, and we're going to shoot some more pictures of our handy dandy flower here today. So if we shoot a RAW image and we take a picture of this flower, we're going to capture all the detail, all the coloring that is within this flower. We're also going to capture such information as white balance, because when you shoot a RAW image, you can change the white balance in the image in the editor. And we're going to look at pulling this into Lightroom, but we're going to also look at pulling this into Photoshop Elements. I'm going to show you when you pull it into the editor that Elements has the same RAW editor as basically what Lightroom does. The only difference is Lightroom can do it on the fly in the program, where Photoshop Elements will do it before you put it into the editor. Now I know that's a lot of talk, but let's first say what is RAW. Now you know it captures more of the color, the detail. So what you end up with when you shoot RAW images is a very large file. So if you have a SD card, let's say your SD card is a 4 GB card, that card is going to fill up very rapidly. I suggest if you're shooting RAW images to either use 16 gig cards or 32 gig cards, 32 being the better card, because the images are uncompressed. When we shoot a JPEG image, we're compressing the colors. We're telling the camera, do the best guess scenario and set the colors based on what you feel the color should be with the available lighting. Now, if you're shooting a wedding, if you're shooting even birthday parties I've shot, if you're shooting portraits, you're better to shoot RAW images. If you're at the zoo, if you're at a county fair, somewhere where you're shooting, like when I went to the air show, if you're shooting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of images of something that is not as critical as something such as a wedding, I know you're going to shoot hundreds of images there, but what you have to remember is your camera card is going to fill up very rapidly, so I normally will set my camera to JPEG. If I'm on vacation, I shoot in JPEG. It works just fine. I trust my camera. So a RAW image, if I took a picture of this white sheet of paper, it captures the whole entire white of the paper. Let's pretend there's colors on here. And I didn't have markers at the time to draw anything, but so on this white paper, a RAW image would capture all the colors and all the great detail. And you'll see in the editor, when we start playing with these pictures in the editor, where we can do a little bit more with RAW than what you would be able to do with JPEG. But surprisingly not a lot. So keep that in the back of your mind. Now what JPEG does is JPEG will shoot this picture of all the colors on there and compress it. Okay? It'll compress it down into a smaller file. It does that in the camera on the fly. What does on the fly mean? The camera has sensors and everything built into it, and it works very simply to just put that all together and put that color and compress it down the best guess scenario. So do you lose detail? Normally not. Are you able to edit the detail out and clean it up as much as a RAW image is? Also probably not. But remember these key topics that we're going to discuss with this. Use RAW images if you're shooting something very critical. Portraits, definitely. Weddings, absolutely. Birthday parties, probably. Your vacation, probably not. I would shoot JPEG on those. The county fair, you know, you're going out, you're taking the kids to the park, you could probably be just as fine with JPEG images. If you're shooting landscapes, you could shoot those in RAW or JPEG. It's really up to you. I tend to shoot my landscape images all in JPEG. So there is a place for JPEG, and I can tell you that if you shoot the camera on automatic, most of the time you're capturing in JPEG format. So there's some settings that you'll have to realize on the camera itself. Now what I do shoot in JPEG, just back this up for a minute, is I shoot as fine JPEG, large, fine JPEG. It's usually marked on your camera as LF or just F for fine JPEG. That way you're capturing the most megapixels that camera can capture. If you have a small card and you're worried about the overall capture of that card, turn it on to medium format. Medium format will still take the entire picture, but it will be a little slightly less quality. Here's a little stopper for you. If you're shooting strictly for the internet, you can get away on shooting either low or medium format, or fine. Low or medium JPEGs, and they'll be absolutely fine, because when they're on the web, and I had this question just a week ago, Jack, how come when I upload my pictures to Facebook and somebody downloads them, they look kind of grainy? The honest truth is, folks, when you upload them to Facebook, Facebook gets billions of pictures every minute. They have to do something to that picture. They wouldn't have enough storage to store the very fine images that we shoot. So what happens on Facebook is they kind of tone them down a little bit. But they're going to look great to the viewer, but when you download them, that would be an issue. So now we're going to shoot a couple of pictures of this flower. And the pictures I'm going to shoot is, the first one I'm going to shoot is in RAW. And then I'm going to take maybe 2 shots in RAW. And then we'll take 2 shots in JPEG. And I may even do that. I'm going to go to medium JPEG and I'm going to go to low JPEG. And we'll see in this session today if we can tell if any of those pictures, if there's a lot of difference between those pictures. And I'm going to let your eyes see for yourself. Now granted, you're seeing this over video, but hopefully it comes out okay. And we should be able to pick up the good pieces of this. And I'm going to, as I'm broadcasting them, trying to broadcast this in the highest quality I can so you can capture this. And if you don't really capture these pictures today and don't get the idea of it, just go to my YouTube channel at 42technoman. You know where it's at, right? And view this actual whole entire video again and see if you can see the difference. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to move the flowers back in, turn the camera on, and we're going to get a couple captures. Okay, so as you see here, we have the flower that we used in last week's show, or the week before last show. And we're going to just take some pictures of this poinsettia when it's still variable. Anyway, so we're going to take some shots of this poinsettia, and I'm going to start with RAW. We're going to look at those images together after I get these shots done. So let me go ahead and get these shots out of the way, and then we'll go ahead and we will start looking at these pictures together. All right, so the first picture we're going to be taking is camera RAW. All right, let me make sure I got this shot. I do. Okay, I'm going to take one more in camera RAW. All right. Now, if you look at your camera settings, and I don't know what camera you have, but on this one, there's a little button here on the Nikon, if you can see this, that says actually quality, okay? It says QUAL. If you hold that in, you can turn the wheel on the back, right here, and adjust the quality. So now we're going to go to large, fine. Now this is a JPEG image, large, fine. It's a JPEG image. I'm going to shoot this one. Make sure it comes up okay. And it does. That's a large JPEG image. I'm going to change my quality again now. We're going to shoot normal JPEG, large normal. So we'll shoot that. All right, that's large normal. Next, we're going to shoot basic normal, or basic large. It's a basic large. And again, you notice that I'm shooting with no flash. So that gave us our images we're looking for. So we had large, fine, large normal, and large basic. Now I'm going to go in the menu setting here, and I'm going to look under exposure and see where I can find this at. Let's see here. says image quality basic. So my camera shoots RAW, JPEG fine, JPEG normal, and JPEG basic. That's the ones my camera shoots. So your cameras can probably shoot the same 4 basic settings. Now this camera will also do RAW, JPEG fine, RAW, JPEG normal, and RAW, JPEG basic. And then it just shoots normal RAW, as I stated already. So those are the settings. Now normally I keep my camera on large fine. That's what I normally keep it on. So I've got the menu here, and I always reset my camera back to the settings I want to keep it on. So that is the basic shooting of RAW images and fine images. Now together we're going to look at these to see how they look compared to each other. I'm going to pull that RAW image into Photoshop Elements, and we're going to have a look at that. And we're going to do all that back in the editor. So I'll catch you in the editor. Okay, this is just my short little commercial break. Folks, you know, many of you out there are trying to learn Photoshop Elements. You just can't get it. It's just one of those things, you know, you look at YouTube videos and they're great. That's a great way to learn. But overall, you want to learn from start to finish. If you do, check out my new website, jtclearning.com. You can see, I'm not kidding you, there's 7 people right now in the Photoshop Elements 13 class, and there's 16 people in the Photoshop Elements 12 class. So once again, that's jtclearning.com. A quick word from our sponsors. If you're into photography and you want to do this more professionally and you want to get paid for your work without worrying about meeting with your clients all the time, there's a great website for that. It's SmugMug. Check out smugmug.com. You can sign up for a pro account. And if you do that, use the code you'll find on my website, Jack's Tech Corner. Jack's Tech Corner, you can find that, and I'll be putting those later on today on thephotographyguy.net website, so you can also have them there. Folks, you know, I have a great friend there. His name is Ken. He's the programmer of Green Screen Wizard. The Green Screen Wizard is a great program for all your green screening needs. He now has a video program, so if you're a videographer, you may want to check that out. I truly love the layers. I think layers are fantastic, and maybe I'll do a class on that in a couple weeks. And I had Ken on the show a couple years ago. He actually did some demos. You might want to check those out at YouTube. And at YouTube, you'll find those at 42 Technoman. Once again, that's 42 Technoman. Okay, so that was my very short anyway, commercial break. Just you know, support our sponsors out there. They're great people and they're easy to work with. If you want to buy the Green Screen Wizard, I'll have a link to that on thephotographyguy.net, but you can find it on jackstechcorner.com. So folks, we're going to go into now looking at the editor and learning how to edit your photos, and we're going to look at the comparison on those photos that we shot. So let's go ahead, and we're going to be getting into that right now. So sit back, enjoy, grab yourself a cup of coffee, or if you happen to be Peter in the UK, it's in the afternoon, you might want to grab another beer, and go ahead, and you can start on this one here. Let's see if we can get this going. Okay, we're first going to have a look at these pictures in Photoshop Lightroom. I've been having a lot of questions on Lightroom lately, and I wanted to bring this to your attention and show you a little bit more about Lightroom and how Lightroom works. So this is Lightroom. These are the 5 pictures that we actually took here in this session. So the first one, as you can see, if you can see the top of that, is NEF. The second one is also NEF. That's the Nikon RAW format. The next 3 are JPEG images. The first one is the full JPEG or the fine. The next one is the medium JPEG image. And then we have the small JPEG image. And we're going to compare those here in just a second. So why is Lightroom so powerful with RAW images? If we double click on this image, we can bring it up to the full screen. And you'll see again at the very top, it says flowers.nef. So if we go over to develop, click on develop, and that now allows us to develop in a sense of the old film days, or it allows us to do our basic editing exposure settings. So over to the right, you'll see where you have different settings for this photo, such as temperature, tint, we have exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks. What I want to point out here is the white balance. So if I click on the white balance as shot, I can change this white balance to daylight. You can change it to shade. You can see what it's doing there with the overall color. Tungsten lighting, fluorescent lighting. So we can change the white balance on the fly. We're going to go back to as shot. You can also adjust your white balance just by very simply clicking the little eyedropper and going down and finding a solid white piece. Now see there's a white piece on this tag. We're just going to click on that. And you'll see now where the overall picture changes the temperature, the tint for a custom white balance. Let's go back to as shot. Now what we're going to look at is we are simply going to look at the exposure settings. So we can also adjust these exposure settings. And again, this is all in our raw image. Let's go back now. Let's go back to the library. And what we're going to do next is go back to our images. So that's the raw image. Let's pick out our fine JPEG image. Let's put that image into the developer. So put it in the developer. And the first thing we're going to notice, if we click on this white balance, you'll see we have auto or custom. Because remember, if you take a JPEG image, you don't get all that extra data for the editor to work with. What you're only getting is a compressed image. So everything is already compressed. The other image is not compressed. All right. So we can only change the white balance this way. You can do a custom white balance still. So we can still click on that tag and make it a custom white balance like we did the other one, but we can't select the other white balances. We can still adjust the exposure and the contrast. We can make it less contrasty, more contrasty. We can adjust the highlights. We can pull the highlights up and we can do that stuff with the photograph. That should show you a little bit more about the power of the raw image. Let's go back to the library. The next thing I want to show you is we're going to compare, just really quickly, the raw image with our JPEG image. So if I click on the raw image and I click on our JPEG fine, I hold my control key down, I can actually compare these XY. Let's compare these. And here is our overall images. Now I just switched this to the sizes. You can see the sizes are the same. 416 by 616, 4016 by 616. One's a raw image, an NEF, and the other one's a JPEG image, a JPG. But if we examine these closely, we can see, let me see if we can pull these up. You can see that the raw image captures greater detail because I already blew this up and you can see where the differences are in the blowing the pictures up. It's not really enough to see by your eye. Your eye's not going to really see it. But when you're editing a fine image or a raw image, that's just a different way it captures everything. So we're going to go and we're going to zoom this back out. And we'll just zoom it back out here. Okay. So that is the two different as far as the raw image and the fine JPEG image. Let's go back to all of our pictures. What I want to show you now is the difference between a fine JPEG image, this image, and we're going to look at the low res image. Remember, we shot this on basic. I'm going to click on that. Let's compare these two images. So these two images are in essence the same photograph. Let's blow these images up. And we're going to try to zoom this more here. And we'll try to get an idea of the picture itself, the overall picture. So you can see now where the finer image captures greater detail on the edges, how sharp it is. Over here on the smaller image, you can see where it becomes less sharp on the outside edges. The reason that is because we're using a lot less pixels to capture this. Now, where people don't understand, when you're using less pixels, either shooting, when you're shooting JPEG, you're not going to shoot RAW at less pixels. RAW is the greatest file size you can create. The less pixels are always created very simply using JPEG because of the compression. But when you're using less pixels, you're actually capturing less detail. Where that actually bothers or should be the most concern with you, if you're going to take a picture and you're thinking of blowing it up, anything larger than an 8x10. So if you're going to do 11x14, if you're going to do a 12x20, 16x20, or a 20x30, you would never ever shoot a very low res picture. You won't blow it up that large. All right, let's go back out of here. All right, so those are the comparisons between the two different photographs, the fine image and the basic image. And the file sizes are a lot smaller. I'm going to try to see here if we can see the file size. Let's go back out. We're going to go here. And we're going to try to see if we can see it under metadata. Trying to see if I can see the overall file size of this photograph. And I really don't see it in here. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go out. And I'm going to go to where these pictures are stored at. And let me see where these pictures are stored, just to tell you the difference of the file sizes. So our raw image, the file size itself is 29.4 megabytes. 29.4 megabytes. Where the fine JPEG image is 8.4 megabytes. That's a huge difference. Let's now talk about the basic image is 1.5 megabytes. So if you're going to take this photograph, and let's say you're just taking a couple pictures of the kids, and you want to upload those to a website for grandma to see. Grandma's on dial-up internet service. This will make it a lot faster for grandma to be able to download these pictures if they're a smaller file size. Now, with that said, if the file size is smaller, you cannot blow that picture up ever and get it printed. What I would suggest to do is always take your images in the RAW, not in RAW or either RAW or fine JPEG. The reason I say it is because we can always export out of any of your programs and export a smaller image to send off to grandma. If you captured one of those really great images, then you can take that and blow it up and have that image. Okay, so that is the comparison of the images. Now let's go and show you in Photoshop Elements if you can work with raw images. I think this is very, very important. So let me open up my organizer first. And we're going to import those pictures. That's not my organizer. It's open the organizer. We're going to import those same pictures into the organizer. So get videos and files. And we're going to bring these pictures back up. So I'm going to the class here, raw images. I'm going to highlight all these images and we're going to import these into our Photoshop Elements organizer. And you'll notice right away that the organizer can handle all these different pictures. So over the years, the organizer have gotten really, really good at handling your raw images, and they can display those the same way as we displayed them in Lightroom. So we have them organized. Once you have them in here, you may simply want to select all the pictures. You may want to put those into a new album. And we're going to call this raw class. Then we'll just simply click OK. All right. Now what we're going to look at here is the raw image. And I hope this is the raw image. We're going to right click on it. And we're going to do show file info. And it is. If you do show file info on the right hand side of your organizer, it will tell you the name of the image, and you can see it is the NEF, or the raw image. So when you open up a raw image in Photoshop Elements to edit it, you're going to have another screen that you're going to be dealing with. Let's go ahead and we're going to have a look at that. So I'm going to right click on it and go to Edit with Photoshop Elements Editor. Once I do that, it's going to open it up. And what we're going to come up with first is Camera Raw. Now this is the newest version of Elements. So this is Camera Raw 8.7.1. Here's something to think about. If you're going to shoot Camera Raw and you don't upgrade your Photoshop Elements as much as you should, let's say you buy a new camera. That camera may, in fact, the raw image may not work in the Photoshop Elements that you may be using. That's just something trial and error. You're going to have to work that out. Because as new cameras come to market, new file sizes come to market, and new formats come to market, what happens is with those photos, or with Photoshop Elements, they keep changing the back end to match those different formats or different ways that pictures are handled by your newer cameras. That's another good reason why it's a really good reason to upgrade your software, especially if you're buying a new camera. You can see here on this one, we're going to blow this up a little bit and show you a little bit here. Not the picture itself. We'll blow the whole thing up here to show you. But you can see now the white balance is the same as it was in Lightroom. This is, in essence, the same editor that you have in Lightroom. You can do basically the same things, the basic edits. So we can change again the white balance to daylight. You can see where it changes exactly the same. Because Lightroom's also using the same Camera Raw editor. Because when Adobe writes these programs, they're rating them all basically the same. You can go fluorescent. We're going to go back to as shot. The next thing we can do here is you can see where we can add the exposures. We can still do our custom white balance. There's a little eyedropper in the top toolbar here. If I click on that, I can click on that little white tag again. You can see where it did the exact same thing as Lightroom did. We can actually undo that. So we're going to undo that. Oops. Nope. Took it the wrong way. Take that back off. All right. So anyway, the next thing we're going to do here, let's change this back to as shot. Okay. So we can also adjust our exposure, just like we did before. So this is why I was telling you, if you, in fact, are going to be using Photoshop Elements and the organizer to edit, let's say, your vacation pictures, and you have 400 or 500 vacation pictures, if they're all in RAW, every time you pull a picture into the editor, you have to go through this step to get it into the editor. Okay, so that's why it could make it very, very, a very daunting task at best to be able to do that. So once you get all your settings done, your blacks, your whites, and you set everything up the way you want it, now let's set some blacks here, lower some blacks down. You can do clarity. Clarity is pretty nice. Vibrance is also nice. Then we can oversaturate the picture a little bit, make it a little bit more saturated. Once you get everything set up the way you want to, all you do is click on Open Image. When you click on Open Image, it's going to apply that. It's going to compress the image down, and then it's going to put it into your editor. Go back here. So now this picture can be edited by Photoshop Elements with those couple extra steps. Having to go in and having to open your raw image in the raw image editor, and then making your adjustments and then putting it in here. Now, that's not to say you always have to make adjustments in the raw image editor. You always have the choice to go in and you can just click open and throw it right into the editor. But you have to go through that extra step. Now let's go back out to our organizer. Go back to my organizer here. And we're going to open up a JPEG image. Now JPEG image, if we click on the JPEG image, all we have to do is right click on it and we're going to go to Open in Photoshop Elements. Now with the JPEG image, you'll notice that it opens right up. And we can start working on it as we normally would. You know, you can go over to, you can make your duplicate image. You can go over to adjustment layers. We can adjust brightness and contrast. And so you're doing all the same stuff that you would do with Camera Raw, basically. You can do something like that. You can adjust your brightness. And you can stack these. So we can go in here. We're going to do hue and saturation, one of my favorites. And in hue and saturation, we're going to saturate the photograph a little bit more like we did before. Play with your hue. You can turn this up and down. And sometimes, you know, people don't realize sometimes you can play around and adjust colors and make it look a lot different than what it did originally. And maybe you would even like it more. So you have a lot of options. And as I said, you can just keep stacking these things all you want. Here's photo filters. You can do a warming filter. We can do a cooling filter. We can make it a little bit more blue. There you go. So you do have a lot of options that you can do with a JPEG image. So don't think that just because I took a JPEG image, I'm not a real photographer. Or just because I shoot in RAW, I'm a great photographer. There's a few different basic steps that you got to worry about. So, you know, there's one instance is good for one thing and one may be good for something else. Okay, well, let's get back to me in the studio. I'll see you back live in just a minute. But right now, we're going to wrap up this podcast and wrap up the vidcast. Folks, thank you very much for tuning into the show. If you're downloading this on iTunes, once again, please watch it and subscribe to my YouTube videos at 42Technoman. The number 4, the number 2, Technoman. I still do have the DVD collections available if you're interested in that. You can purchase one of the Elements DVDs at jackstechcorner.com. I also opened up, and remember I call it the new, but I also opened up the Online Learning Center at jtclearning.com. That's a great resource. And somebody did email me last week and said, Jack, if I sign up for that, am I on there for life, or do I only get it for a week? Or folks, you get it for life, at least my lifetime anyway, because once I'm gone, I don't know if there's anybody to continue this site, but and it may in fact stay up, and I'll just leave instructions with my wife to always pay the domain name every year, so that site will stay active forever. But you are on there and you can use those videos as much as you want and learn every day as much as you can. So you can sign up today to start learning, as I showed you, Photoshop Elements 12 or 13. At the top of that page, just click on Courses and then click on Photography. So once again, that's jtclearning.com. Folks, take care. Have a great, great work week. And remember, above anything else that you're ever going to do, keep those shutters clicking, keep your editors editing. That's the only way to learn photography. That's the only way to learn photography. No, that's wrong. That's the only way to learn photography, is to do it, do it, and do it. If your camera's in the bag, you're not doing any justice to your education with photography or editing. So you have to get those pictures in the editor and edit every now and then and play around. So check those out. And I did hear that you can download a trial version of Adobe Lightroom from adobe.com. So go over and download the trial. You get 30 days, play with it, kick its tires, and say either you like it or you don't. Now, once you do like it, I wouldn't buy it from adobe.com right now. I would wait until either the holidays or then use my Amazon link at jackstechcorner.com or thephotographyguy.net. Use my Amazon link and go in and buy it, because you'll probably get a better deal on Amazon than you will on Adobe. Thanks, my friends, so much for tuning in and listening to me here on thephotographyguy.net. I'll talk to you next time. Bye for now. Thanks for tuning in to The Photography Guy. I am a photography guy, and I'll be here once again next time for more photography tips and tricks. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe to the show and enjoy the music.